This is Larry He presenting his chemistry unit final part 2. For 1a, we can simply import the formula for Celsius, C equals Kelvin, K minus 273.15. And importing Kelvin 250, we get Celsius equaling to negative 23.15. This is its boiling point. This is important because for 1b, since the boiling point is smaller than room temperature, 23 Celsius, it is past its boiling point, meaning it is a gas. For 1c, I believe that since it is in gas form, it would not pose a reasonable threat to the body, and you can really inject it properly. For 1d, the room temperature one would be has more energy, as it would be in gas form, meaning it would have more energy, more heat, as stated by the KMT, making it more spacious. For 1e, since absolute 0 is 0 Kelvin or negative 23.15 Celsius, we can simply import the formula that Celsius equals 0 Kelvin plus 150 Kelvin, which is above 0 Kelvin. That's what the question asks. And then we can just find the formula for each. Since 0 minus 273.15 equals negative 273.15, I just inserted it there and had the formula for 150 Kelvin, which is 150 minus 273.15. And by seeing this formula, by doing it, we get Celsius equals negative 273.15 minus 123.15. And that equals Celsius being negative 396.3. This for 2p and a, I kind of did them together. You can see that p equals protons, n equals neutrons, e equals electrons, which are those little black dots, and fluorine has a mass number of 19, while potassium has a mass number of 39. For 2c, they create an ionic bond because once they go for a chemical reaction, the potassium has one electron on the outer shell, while fluorine is missing one electron on the outer shell. So the hanging electron will transfer to fluorine, allowing both atoms to have full shells. And because of this transfer, potassium will have a positive charge and fluorine will have a negative charge. For 2d, the simplest way I can explain it is that ionic bonds transfer electrons while covalent bonds share electrons. To name the compound, we simply look at the periodic table and realize that potassium is positive and fluorine is negative, and we just simply, and since fluorine is negative, we put that in the back, and since potassium is positive, we put in the front, and change fluorine to fluoride. For 3a, to find the number of atoms, we look at how many atoms there are, and since one lead is still one lead and 2 oxygen is 2 oxygen, we can rewrite it into this form, meaning that there's 1 lead atom and there's 2 oxygen atoms, and since 1 plus 2 equals 3, there are 3 atoms in total in this. To name this, since lead has a positive charge and oxygen has a negative charge, this goes back, this goes front, and we name it lead oxide. For 3b, since calcium has there are 3 calcium atoms from this, we can simply add that there. But since this is phosphate, I believe, we have to multiply this 2 into this compound, which means that this atom will have its amount doubled, which means 1 times 2 equals 2, and oxygen will have its amount doubled, meaning 4 times 2 equals 8. And then we can simply just subtract it, add it, 3 plus 2 plus 8 equals 13 atoms. And since calcium is in front, we can see that, it's a positive charge, while phosphate is a negative charge. We simply add it together. Calcium phosphate is the compound. For 4a, since Silver is Ag, and it has a ionic charge of +1, while oxide turns to oxygen, and it has a negative ionic charge of -2. And since we add that on a scale, -2 has more mass than +1, so we have to add another +1 to balance each other out. So we have to times silver by 2, which means Ag2 with an O, oxygen, next to it. For 4b, since iron is Fe, and it can either have an ionic charge of 2+ or 3+, we don't know. But since we know that it has a Roman numeral of 3 next to it, we can identify that 3+ is the version of iron we are using. And chlorine just equals chloride, which equals Cl with a negative ionic charge of -1. And by putting that on a balance, we have to add 2 more chlorine atoms to balance out the 3 positive ionic charge of iron. So that means FeCl3 is the formula. For 4C, since calcium is Ca with an ionic charge of +2, and carbonate equals CO3 with an ionic charge of -2, and since it's bicarbonate, we can add those together, and since bi means 2, I believe that the formula is C2O6 with an ionic charge of -4. And since a +2 charge does not balance out a -4 charge, it needs another one. We can say the formula is Ca2 brackets CO3 bracket 2. For 5a, the products are carbon dioxide, which is CO2, water, H2O, and energy, which is still energy. And I believe, because of this, the arrow simply means create. Hydrocarbon plus oxygen creates carbon dioxide, water, and energy. This is a chemical change because it does not change a state of matter. It is just creating combustion, which makes a new gas. It's exothermic, as this is the formula for combustion, and most combustions are exothermic.